Good morning, boys and girls. We are going to be reading a new chapter of Black Beauty today. Tomorrow is actually the last day of our reading. We have 2 short chapters tomorrow to hear about the end of Black Beauty's life, the last home that he ends up at. And so today we have one more new owner. Surprisingly, yesterday we had just a very short time with a man named Jakes, who worked for this corn dealer and baker. And they came in contact with a woman who was very kind and had some wise words to say about the horses. Do you remember what that was? Basically, she was saying, horses can't speak. She called them dumb creatures because they cannot speak. But that doesn't mean that just because they can't speak that they don't experience pain. And that rather than following along with bad fashions, we should start good fashions. So if those bearing reins that hold a horse's head up high are what's fashionable, but it's not actually a good fashion, then don't just follow along with that. Start your own good fashion and make it the new fashion to have horses whose heads are natural and able to move around freely, which is better for the horse. It's better for the person who the horse is pulling the cart of. It's better for everybody. So why not start a good fashion rather than just following along with something bad that somebody else is doing? Today we're going to see a new owner, and unfortunately it's an even worse situation for Black Beauty, but it's going to get better tomorrow. I promise you that. So let's follow along with chapter 47. If you have a book, you can follow along in that book. Oops, sorry, wrong spot. Those are the notes, which, by the way, I'm continuing to put the notes in RightThinker. If you would like to take them, you are welcome to. Or maybe, like myself, sometimes I just refer to it so I can remind myself of certain characters or things that happened the day before. You can use it like that too, just to read and remind yourself of what's happening. Okay. So, chapter 47. Now, my new master I shall never forget. He had black eyes and a hooked nose, which means it kind of came out like this with a big bump. His mouth was as full of teeth as a bulldog's, and his voice was as harsh as the grinding of cartwheels over gravelled stones. His name was Nicholas Skinner, and I believe he was the man that poor Seedy Sam drove for. Do you remember Seedy Sam? He's the man who was so tired, he was starting to be mean to his horse just because he couldn't control himself anymore. And he thought there is no chance of ever getting enough sleep or making enough money that he can get a day off of rest. And he ended up dying because he got so exhausted and sick from that exhaustion. So this is that man that he drove for. Sounds like he was very unfair to Seedy Sam. Now, I've heard men say that seeing is believing, but I should say that feeling is believing. It's a good point that sometimes you do need to see to really believe something, but feeling something makes you truly understand. Now, for as much as I had seen before, I never knew till now the utter misery of a cab horse's life. Skinner had a low set of cabs and a low set of drivers. He was hard on the men, and the men were hard on the horses. In this place, we had no Sunday rest, and it was in the heat of summer. Sometimes on a Sunday morning, a party of fast men would hire the cab for the day, 4 of them inside and another with the driver, and I had to take them 10 or 15 miles out into the country and back again. Never would any of them get down to walk up a hill. That would be the right thing to do. They can walk. Let it ever be so steep or the day ever so hot. Unless, indeed, when the driver was afraid I should not manage it, and sometimes I was so fevered and worn that I could hardly touch my food. How I used to long for the nice bran mash with knitter in it that Jerry used to give us on Saturday nights in hot weather, that used to cool us down and make us so comfortable. Then we had 2 nights and a whole day for unbroken rest, and on Monday morning we were as fresh as young horses again. But here there was no rest, and my driver was just as hard as his master. He had a cruel whip with something so sharp at the end that it sometimes drew blood, making Black Beauty whip, just that little tip of the whip. Making Black Beauty bleed. Sorry about that. Now, and he would even whip me under the belly and flip the lash out at my head. Indignities like these took the heart out of me terribly. But still, I did my best and never hung back. For, as poor Ginger said, it was no use. Men are the strongest. Oh no, Black Beauty is becoming like Ginger and just feeling resigned to having somebody treat him poorly, because he knows that if he were to react like Ginger used to like knock someone off, well, they would just be much, much worse to him than before. So it's better off for him to just take whatever punishment they're giving him, even though he's not doing anything wrong. My life was now so utterly wretched that I wished I might, like Ginger, drop down dead at my work and be out of my misery. And one day my wish very nearly came to pass. I went on the stand at 8 in the morning and had done a good share of work when we had to take the railway. A long train was just expected in, so my driver pulled up at the back of some of the outside cabs to take the chance of a return fare. It was a very heavy train, and as all the cabs were soon engaged, ours was called for. There was a party of 4, a noisy, blustering man with a lady, a little boy and a young girl, and a great deal of luggage. Now the lady and the boy got into the cab, and while the man ordered about the luggage, the young girl came and looked at me. "Papa," she said, "I'm sure this poor horse cannot take us and all our luggage so far. He is so very weak and worn up. Do look at him. This little girl is smarter than anybody else because she's actually paying attention to what's happening in front of her own eyes." "Oh, he's all right, miss," said my driver. "He's strong enough." Now the porter, who was pulling about some heavy boxes, suggested to the gentleman, as there was so much luggage, whether he would not take a second cab. "Can your horse do it, or can't he?" said the blustering man. "Oh, he can do it all right, sir. Send up the boxes, porter. He could take more than that." "No, he can't." And he helped to haul up a box so heavy that I could feel the springs go down. "Papa, Papa, do take a second cab," said the young girl in a beseeching tone. She's pleading with him. "Don't do this to this horse. He can't take it." "I'm sure we are wrong. I'm sure it is very cruel," she said. "Nonsense, Grace. Get in at once and don't make all this fuss. A pretty thing it would be if a man of business had to examine every cab horse before he hired it. The man knows his own business, of course. There, get in and hold your tongue." Now my gentle friend had to obey, and box after box was dragged up and lodged on the top of the cab or settled by the side of the driver. At last all was ready, and with his usual jerk at the rein and slash of the whip, he drove out of the station. The load was very heavy, and I had had neither food nor rest since morning. But I did my best, as I always had done, in spite of cruelty and injustice. That is amazing that Black Beauty is still doing his best, no matter what. I got along fairly till we came to Ludgate Hill, but there the heavy load and my exhaustion were too much. I was struggling to keep on, goaded by constant chucks of the rein and use of the whip, when in a single moment, I cannot tell how, my feet slipped from under me, and I fell heavily to the ground on my side. Now, if any of us people are to fall, unless it's a really old person, it doesn't really affect us very much. But for a horse to fall, it's really bad. Remember that Black Beauty's knees got very badly injured, and it made him actually go to a new home altogether when that happened with Reuben Smith. Now, the suddenness and the force with which I fell seemed to beat all the breath out of my body. I lay perfectly still. Indeed, I had no power to move, and I thought now I was going to die. I heard a sort of confusion round me, loud, angry voices, and the getting down of the luggage, but it was all like a dream. I thought I heard that sweet, pitiful voice saying, "Oh, that poor horse, it is all our fault." The little girl, Grace, is saying this. Someone came and loosened the throat strap of my bridle and undid the traces which kept the collar so tight upon me. Someone said, "He's dead. He'll never get up again." Then I could hear a policeman giving orders, but I did not even open my eyes. I could only draw a gasping breath now and then. Some cold water was thrown over my head, and some cordial was poured into my mouth, and something was covered over me. I cannot tell how long I lay there, but I found my life coming back, and a kind-voiced man was patting me and encouraging me to rise. After some more cordial had been given me, and after 1 or 2 attempts, I staggered to my feet and was gently led to some stables which were close by. Here I was put into a well-littered stable, and some warm gruel was brought to me, which I drank thankfully. In the evening, I was sufficiently recovered to be led back to Skinner's stable, where I think they did the best for me they could. In the morning, Skinner came with a farrier to look at me. He examined me very closely and said, "This is a case of overwork more than disease, and if you could give him a run-off for 6 months, he would be able to work again." Meaning, let him rest for 6 months, and then he actually could do some more work. But now there is not an ounce of strength left in him. "Then he must just go to the dogs," said Skinner. Meaning, Black Beauty would be better off killed just because he can't work right now. "I have no meadows to nurse sick horses in," he says. "He might get well or he might not. That sort of thing don't suit my business. My plan is to work them as long as they'll go and then sell them for what they'll fetch, at the knackers or elsewhere." "If he was broken-winded," said the farrier, "you had better have him killed out of hand. But he is not. There is a sale of horses coming off in about 10 days. If you rest him and feed him up, he may pick up, and you may get more than his skin is worth, at any rate." Now, upon this advice, Skinner, rather unwillingly, I think, gave orders that I should be well fed and cared for, and the stableman, happily for me, carried out the orders with a much better will than his master had in giving them. 10 days of perfect rest, plenty of good oats, hay, bran mashes with boiled linseed mixed in them, did more to get up my condition than anything else could have done. Those linseed mashes were delicious, and I began to think, after all, it might be better to live than go to the dogs. When the 12th day after the accident came, I was taken to the sale, a few miles out of London. I felt that any change from my present place must be an improvement. So I held up my head and hoped for the best. So he has seen the worst of life as a cab horse in that situation and thankfully escaped from being killed. They were about to kill him just because he wasn't able to work as well. But he just needed a little rest, and now he's going off to a sale. So we're going to hear about that horse sale, as well as who buys him in the next chapter. I think you'll enjoy it. And I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day. There's a couple of questions to answer about this, and I will see you later. Bye.